The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched wider than most cities. Its curved walls rose so high that clouds sometimes formed near the ceiling. Lights from 1,000 different worlds floated in the air like trapped stars. Representatives from across the known universe sat in their designated sections, each species in chairs or pools or hovering platforms designed for their unique bodies. This was Velorax Prime, the station world that served as neutral ground for all spacefaring civilizations. Every 100 years, the Council gathered here to review the laws that governed interaction between species. Today, over 3,000 delegates had come to discuss matters of trade, territory, and the countless small disputes that arose when very different beings tried to share a galaxy. Ambassador Krethval of the Zerani hegemony rose from his hovering platform. He was tall and thin, with skin like polished silver and eyes that shifted color with his moods. Right now, they were a confident blue. He had prepared for this moment for decades. "Honored colleagues," he began, his voice carried by translation devices to every corner of the vast chamber. "I wish to discuss an old matter. A very old matter that I believe deserves our attention." The hall quieted. The Zerani were known for their careful thinking. When they spoke, others usually listened. 200 standard years ago, this council placed a new species on the restricted species list. They were called humans. They came from a small planet called Earth, in an unremarkable solar system, in a quiet corner of the galaxy that held little strategic value. Several delegates nodded. They remembered the humans, though most had never actually met one. The restricted species list was reserved for civilizations deemed too dangerous, too unstable, or too unpredictable to participate fully in galactic affairs. Species on this list could not join military alliances. They could not participate in colonization disputes. They could not vote on matters of war and peace. "The humans have been on this list for 2 centuries, Krethval continued. "In that time, they have spread to perhaps 40 worlds, all in their small corner of space. They have developed modest technology. They trade peacefully with their neighbors. They have caused no major incidents." He paused for effect. "I propose that we remove them from the restricted species list. Whatever threat our ancestors imagined they posed, it has clearly not come to pass. The humans are a minor civilization of no particular importance. Keeping them restricted serves no purpose except to insult a species that has done nothing wrong." For a moment, silence held the chamber. Then the laughter began. It started with the Kirix delegation. The insectoid beings clicked their mandibles together in their version of amusement. Their compound eyes glittered as they leaned toward each other, sharing the joke. "The humans?" One Kirix delegate chittered. "Restricted? I had forgotten they were even on the list." The laughter spread. The aquatic Velfrani bubbled in their water tanks, their tentacles waving with mirth. The reptilian Kovathi, usually so serious and still, allowed deep rumbling sounds to escape their throats. Even the energy beings from the Null Collective flickered in patterns that suggested amusement. A Velfrani ambassador rose from his tank, water streaming from his blue-green skin. "I have seen humans," he announced. "They visited our world once. Soft little things. No claws, no armor, no venom. They cannot even breathe underwater. What possible threat could they pose to anyone?" More laughter followed. A Kirix general joined in. "Their lifespan is laughable. 80, perhaps 90 years if they are lucky. By the time one of them masters a skill, they are already dying. How can such brief creatures accomplish anything of importance?" "They have no natural weapons," added a Korvathi warrior. "No teeth worth mentioning. No strength compared to a proper species. A single Kovathi child could defeat 3 adult humans in combat." The mockery continued. Delegate after delegate rose to share their opinions of the humans, and each opinion was smaller than the last. Humans were curiosities. Humans were amusing. Humans were perhaps clever enough to have developed spaceflight, but certainly nothing special in the grand scope of the galaxy. Ambassador Crethvold stood quietly through all of this. His eyes had shifted to a satisfied green. The reaction was exactly what he had expected. When the laughter finally began to fade, he spoke again. "Then we are in agreement? The human restriction can be lifted? Let us vote on it now." Someone called out. "Why waste time on such a small matter?" But before the voting could begin, a new voice spoke. It was quiet, but something in its tone made the entire chamber fall silent. "You should not do this." All eyes turned to the speaker. Elder Councilor Morath sat in a simple chair near the back of the chamber. He was ancient beyond easy description, a being whose species had died out long ago, leaving him as the last of his kind. His body was vaguely humanoid, but wrapped in robes that hid most of his features. 3 eyes, each a different color, looked out from a face that had seen civilizations rise and fall. Morath had been present when the original ban was enacted. He was one of the few beings in the galaxy who remembered that time. "Elder Morath," Crethvold said, keeping his voice respectful, "surely you see that the ban has outlived its purpose. The humans have proven themselves harmless." Morath's 3 eyes blinked slowly, one after another. "Harmless," he repeated. "Yes, that is exactly what we believed when we first encountered them. Harmless, unremarkable, unimportant. We were wrong." A Kirix delegate made a clicking sound of dismissal. "With respect, Elder, you are very old. Perhaps your memory has been colored by time. What threat could those soft little creatures possibly pose?" Morath did not answer immediately. He seemed to be looking at something far away, something the others could not see. "The ban was not enacted to protect the galaxy from what humans are," he finally said. "It was enacted to protect the galaxy from what humans become." More confused laughter rippled through the chamber, though it was quieter now. Morath's words had an unsettling quality. "What do you mean, become?" asked the Velthrani. "Species do not become anything. They are what they are." "That is true for most species," Morath agreed. "But humans are different. When they face no challenges, they are exactly as you describe them. Soft, weak, short-lived, unremarkable. But when they face pressure, when they face hardship, when they face enemies who underestimate them..." He trailed off, shaking his head slowly. "I have lived for a very long time. I have seen many terrible things, but I have never seen anything quite like what humans become when they have nothing left to lose." The chamber had grown very quiet now. Something in Morath's voice made even the most dismissive delegates pay attention. "You speak in riddles, Elder," Crethvold said. "Give us something concrete. Give us evidence." "There is footage," Morath said, "from the incident that led to the original ban. It has been sealed in the Council archives for 200 years. Very few beings have ever viewed it. Then let us see it." A Kovathi called out, "Let us see this great threat that humans pose. Perhaps it will help us understand why our ancestors were so foolish as to fear them." Several delegates voiced agreement. Others clicked or bubbled or hummed their support. The mood in the chamber was still amused, though a hint of curiosity had crept in. What could possibly be in this footage? Morath's 3 eyes closed slowly. "Very well. I will authorize the release of the sealed files. But I want you all to remember this moment. I want you to remember that you asked for this, that you laughed, that you did not believe." "We will remember," Crethvold said, a hint of impatience in his voice. "Now please, Elder, show us why we should fear these harmless creatures." Morath made a gesture, and somewhere in the vast machinery of the Council, ancient files began to unlock. Holographic projectors hummed to life. The lights in the great chamber dimmed. What you are about to see, Morris said, is the complete record of the Kethrani occupation of Harvest Moon. It took place 203 years ago. At the time, the Kethrani were one of the most powerful warrior species in the known galaxy. Their empire spanned 200 worlds. Their military was feared by all. The Kethrani? A young delegate looked confused. I have never heard of them. No, Morith said quietly. You would not have. They no longer exist. The projectors activated, and suddenly the chamber was filled with images from another time. The delegates found themselves immersed in a holographic recreation of events that had been hidden for 2 centuries. The first image showed a planet. It was small and blue-green, orbiting a yellow star very much like Earth's sun. Text appeared in the air, translated into each delegate's native language. Harvest Moon, Human Agricultural Colony. Population, 8,247. A farming colony, someone muttered. How dangerous could farmers be? The image shifted to show the colony itself. It was a peaceful place, with neat rows of crops stretching toward distant mountains. Simple buildings housed families who had come to this world seeking quiet lives. Children played in fields of golden grain. Farmers drove slow-moving machines through orchards heavy with fruit. Then the Kethrani arrived. The footage showed warships descending through clouds. The Kethrani were impressive creatures, tall and powerful, with armor bodies and 4 arms that ended in sharp claws. They moved with the confidence of beings who had never known defeat. Their ships carried. The holographic display filled the council chamber with images from 2 centuries past. The delegates found themselves watching events unfold as if they were actually present, the advanced technology making every detail painfully clear. 6 months had passed since the Kethrani conquest of Harvest Moon. The footage showed the mining complex in its full operation. Tunnels stretched deep into the planet's crust, carved by machines and by the forced labor of human prisoners. Guards patrolled walkways with weapons ready, their 4-armed forms casting long shadows in the artificial light. At first glance, nothing seemed different from any other conquered colony in galactic history. The humans shuffled through their work rotations with bent backs and empty eyes. They moved slowly, spoke rarely, and flinched whenever a Kethrani came near. Their clothes were worn to threads. Their faces were thin from poor food. Many carried injuries that had been left untreated. They looked exactly like what the Kethrani believed them to be, broken creatures waiting for death. But Elder Morith had paused the footage on a specific frame, and now he pointed to something that most observers would have missed entirely. "Watch her," he said. The image showed a human woman working at a sorting station. She was small and thin, with dark hair pulled back from a tired face. Her hands moved mechanically, separating ore samples into different containers. A Kethrani guard walked past her, and she hunched her shoulders in apparent fear. But her eyes told a different story. For just a fraction of a second, as the guard's back was turned, the woman's eyes tracked his movement with an intensity that did not match her broken posture. Her gaze measured the distance between them, noted the position of his weapon, catalogued the route he would take to complete his patrol. Then the moment passed, and she was once again a defeated slave doing mindless work. Her name was Elena Vasquez, Morris said. Before the occupation, she was a schoolteacher. She taught young children how to read and write. She had never held a weapon in her life. The footage resumed, now following Elena through her daily routine. The delegates watched as she finished her shift, collected her small food ration, and returned to the cramped barracks where prisoners slept in rows on thin mattresses. Everything about her movements suggested exhaustion and defeat. Then, in the dark hours when the guards believed all prisoners were sleeping, Elena slipped from her bed and made her way to a maintenance tunnel that the Kethrani had deemed too small to require supervision. She was not alone. The hidden meeting included a dozen humans, all of them appearing just as broken and hopeless as Elena when guards were watching. But here, in the darkness, their eyes were sharp and their voices were steady. "Report," Elena whispered. A tall man with hands scarred from mining spoke first. "I've mapped the eastern tunnels. There's a junction point where the power lines cross. If we can access it, we can cut electricity to the entire mining complex. How long would it take to reach it?" Elena asked. 3 weeks of careful work, moving only during shift changes when guard attention is lowest. Elena nodded. "Continue. What else?" A young woman spoke next. She was barely more than a teenager, but her eyes held knowledge far beyond her years. "I've been monitoring the guards' communication frequencies. They use standard Kethrani military encryption. It would take months to break, but I've identified patterns in their routine messages. I know when they file reports, when they change shifts, when they're most likely to be distracted. Good. Keep monitoring." An older man cleared his throat. "I have concerning news. Commander Vorath has scheduled another example for tomorrow. He believes productivity has been falling." The group fell silent. Everyone knew what an example meant. The Kethrani would select prisoners at random and execute them publicly to remind the others of what happened to those who failed to work hard enough. It was a standard technique for controlling slave populations, and it had been used 3 times already. "Can we identify who will be selected?" Elena asked. "Not in advance. The selections are random." Elena's jaw tightened. "Then we continue as planned. We cannot save everyone. Not yet. But we will remember every name, every face. When the time comes, there will be an accounting." The meeting continued for another hour, with each member reporting on their small area of focus. One man had been stealing components from the mining equipment, hiding them in places the guards would never think to look. A woman had learned the Kethrani language well enough to understand conversations between guards. A teenage boy had memorized the layout of the ventilation system, every shaft and junction point. Each contribution was small. Each piece of intelligence seemed insignificant on its own. But Elena was building something. She was weaving individual threads into a pattern that the Kethrani could not see. "How long?" asked the scarred miner. "How long until we can act?" Elena's response chilled the delegates watching 2 centuries later. "As long as it takes. If we move too soon, we fail and we die. If we wait, more of us will suffer. I know this. We all know this. But we are going to do this right. We are going to win. And when we win, they will never forget what we did here." The footage shifted to show other moments over the following weeks. The delegates watched a growing network of resistance take shape, invisible to the Kethrani who walked among them every day. A Kirix delegate interrupted the viewing. "This is merely pest behavior. Vermin hiding in the walls. Annoying perhaps, but hardly threatening." The Kethrani had 300 trained warriors. What could these farmers hope to accomplish? "Keep watching," Moritz said. The footage showed Elena volunteering for dangerous work in the deepest mines. This seemed like the act of someone who had given up hope, and the guards treated it as such. They were pleased that the human was finally accepting her place. But Elena had a different purpose. The deep mines had access to the facility supply depot. With each shift, Elena stole small items, a length of wire, a chemical compound, a tool that could be modified for other purposes. Each theft was tiny, unnoticeable in the vast inventory of a mining operation. Each item was hidden in places she had spent weeks identifying. The camera captured a moment when a guard caught her outside her designated area. Elena immediately collapsed to the floor, trembling and weeping, babbling apologies in broken Kethrani. The guard looked at her with disgust, kicked her once for her stupidity, and walked away without filing a report. Such incidents were not worth the paperwork. In her hand, hidden beneath her body, Elena clutched a small electronic component that would eventually become part of a communication device. Humans are excellent actors, Morth observed quietly. They evolved on a world where deception was necessary for survival. They can show emotions they do not feel. They can hide emotions that burn inside them. The Kethrani saw what they expected to see: broken slaves. They never looked deeper. The footage jumped forward by several weeks. The delegates now saw children working in the ventilation systems. These were young humans, some no older than 8 or 9 years by their species standards. They had been assigned to maintenance work in the narrow shafts, because their small bodies could fit where adult Kethrani could not. The guards assumed the children were even more broken than the adults. What could young ones do except follow orders and try to survive? A Velthrani delegate gasped as the footage showed what was actually happening. The children had formed their own network within the resistance. They called themselves the Whisper Brigade, and they were perhaps the most effective intelligence operation in the entire compound. Every day, as they crawled through vents and maintenance tunnels, they memorized guard positions, counted weapons, noted weaknesses in security. Every night, they shared what they had learned with the adult resistance members. One child stood out. Her name was Sophia, and she was 12 years old. Before the occupation, she had been an ordinary girl who liked to sing and play games with her friends. Now she had a different talent. The footage showed her reciting the complete guard rotation schedule for the entire complex. She had memorized over 200 individual guard assignments, including timing, routes, and personal habits of each Kethrani warrior. She delivered this information in the form of a song, a lullaby that she had taught to the other children. To anyone who did not know the code, it sounded like a sad little tune about stars and moons. To the resistance, it was a strategic database. The children seem happy, a Karvathi observer noted with obvious discomfort. They are proud of what they do. Yes, Marth said. Humans have a remarkable ability to find purpose in suffering. They teach their young that struggle builds strength. These children believed they were part of something important, something heroic. They were not wrong. The footage continued to reveal the depth of human adaptation. A man named Dr. Marcus Webb had been an agricultural scientist before the occupation. He knew nothing about weapons or warfare. But when the Kethrani noticed his technical skills, they assigned him to help maintain the mining equipment. Marcus worked diligently, fixing problems and improving systems until the Kethrani came to rely on him. They gave him more and more access, never suspecting that he was learning their technology from the inside out. Every repair taught him something new. Every system he improved gave him deeper understanding of its weaknesses. The holographic display resumed, and the council delegates found themselves drawn deeper into the history of Harvest Moon. The footage now covered the final months before the uprising, and what it revealed made several observers physically uncomfortable. Elder Marath had described human patience. Now the delegates saw what that patience truly looked like. The footage showed the resistance network at its peak. What had started as a few desperate people meeting in dark corners had grown into an organization that touched every part of the mining complex. Hundreds of humans participated, each playing their assigned role with perfect discipline. They communicated through a system of signals so subtle that the Kethrani never noticed, the way a worker scratched their ear, the pattern of taps when sorting ore, the specific words used in meaningless conversations. Elena Vasquez had become the heart of this network. The footage followed her through a typical day, and what it showed was remarkable. In the morning, she worked her shift in the deep mines, moving with the slow shuffle of a broken prisoner. Guards walked past her without a second glance. She was nothing to them, just another human waiting to die. But as she worked, her eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail of her surroundings. She noted a guard who had developed a cough, suggesting illness that might make him careless. She observed that a support beam in Tunnel 7 had developed a crack that would make it unstable if struck at the right angle. She memorized the serial numbers of equipment that had been moved since yesterday. During her midday break, she exchanged words with other workers in the food line. Their conversation sounded like the meaningless complaints of exhausted laborers. But hidden within the words were coded messages, instructions, intelligence, warnings. A woman who mentioned that the food was cold as winter was actually reporting that the armory guards had changed their routine. A man who complained about his aching back on the left side was signaling that a storage room on the left side of level 3 was now unguarded. In the afternoon, Elena returned to work. She made a mistake, dropping her tool and earning a harsh word from a passing guard. She apologized with tears in her eyes, the picture of fearful submission. But when she bent to pick up the tool, she left something behind, a tiny piece of wire wrapped around a stone marker that only resistance members would recognize. By evening, that wire would reach Dr. Webb in the maintenance section. He would incorporate it into a device he was building, a device that would one day broadcast the truth about Harvest Moon to the entire galaxy. The delegates watched this careful dance continue day after day, week after week. The humans never rushed. They never took unnecessary risks. They accepted the loss of fellow prisoners during Vorith's examples without revealing themselves, even when family members were among the victims. Each death was mourned in secret and added to a list that would one day demand justice. A Kovathi general spoke up during a pause in the footage. "Their discipline is impressive," he admitted grudgingly. "But discipline alone does not win battles. How did they expect to defeat 300 Kethrani warriors?" "With knowledge," Morith replied. "And with psychology." The footage shifted to show a new aspect of the resistance, their campaign of fear. The humans had learned that Kethrani warriors were deeply spiritual. Their religion taught that the soul needed to return to sacred ground upon death, or it would wander forever in darkness. To die far from home in an unknown place was the worst fate a Kethrani could imagine. The resistance had no weapons capable of killing Kethrani quickly, but they discovered something almost as effective. They could make the Kethrani afraid. It started with small things. Religious symbols began appearing in strange places throughout the complex, carved into walls or scratched into floors. At first, these symbols were correct, exact reproductions of Kethrani sacred marks. But gradually, they changed. Lines were altered. Meanings were corrupted. The symbols began to suggest dark things, lost souls, eternal wandering, spirits that could never find peace. Guards reported finding these marks during their patrols. Some tried to destroy them, scrubbing at the scratches with their claws. But new marks always appeared the next day, as if the facility itself was bleeding these terrible signs. Then the disappearances began. The footage showed 3 incidents. In each case, a guard walked into a tunnel alone and never emerged. The Kethrani searched for their missing warriors, but found nothing. No bodies, no equipment, no evidence of what had happened. The guards simply ceased to exist. "We know now that the resistance captured these guards," Morith explained. "They were held in a hidden section of the ventilation system that the Kethrani never mapped. They were kept alive for months, fed and cared for, but completely isolated from any contact with their people." "Why keep them alive?" Akirix asked. "Surely dead enemies are safer than living ones?" "Because disappearance is more terrifying than death. The Kethrani could have accepted if their guards had been killed in battle. But the unknown destroys the spirit faster than any wound." The surviving guards began to imagine terrible things. Some believed the facility was haunted by the ghosts of humans they had killed. Others thought the walls themselves were consuming their people. The footage showed Commander Vorath trying to maintain order as fear spread through his forces. He held meetings where he demanded courage and dismissed superstition. He punished guards who spread rumors. He increased patrols and improved security. Nothing helped. The humans had learned to move through the complex like shadows. The children of the Whisper Brigade knew paths that adult Kethrani could never fit through. The Resistance had spent months studying every guard's habits, every patrol route, every moment when attention would be elsewhere. They could be anywhere, at any time, and the Kethrani would never see them coming. One particularly disturbing piece of footage showed a Kethrani guard sleeping in his quarters. The camera had been hidden by Dr. Webb during routine maintenance, and it captured what happened in the night. The door opened silently. A small figure crept into the room, a human child, no more than 10 years old. The child moved with practiced stealth, pausing whenever the guard shifted in his sleep. Slowly, carefully, the child placed something on the guard's bedside table, a small stone with a corrupted religious symbol carved into it. Then the child vanished as quietly as they had come. The guard woke the next morning and found the stone. His screams echoed through the barracks. He had to be sedated by the medical staff. 3 days later, he was transferred off-world at his own request, his mind too broken to continue serving. A child, a Velthrani delegate whispered. They used children for psychological warfare. The children volunteered, Morith said. They considered it an honor to serve the Resistance. The adults did not ask them to take such risks. The children demanded the right to participate. The footage continued, showing the gradual deterioration of Kethrani morale. Guards who had once walked with confidence now moved in groups, jumping at shadows. Officers who had mocked human weakness now slept with weapons at hand. The mighty warriors of the Kethrani hegemony were becoming afraid of farmers and teachers and schoolchildren. Commander Vorath appeared again, meeting with his senior officers in a secure room. He looked older than before, the weight of command visible in his posture. "We have a spy," he declared. "Someone among the humans is organizing this. I want every prisoner questioned. Search every corner of this facility. Find the one responsible." His security chief hesitated. "Commander, there are thousands of prisoners. Questioning them all would take weeks. And the production quotas from the home world. I do not care about production." Vorath slammed all 4 fists on his table. "Something is very wrong here. I can feel it. These humans are planning something. I know they are. But every time I think I understand them, they surprise me. Perhaps we should request reinforcements? And admit that I cannot control a group of farmers? No, we will handle this ourselves." Vorath's voice dropped lower. "Find the leader. Find whoever is behind this. I want them broken publicly, slowly, as an example. Break their spirit, and the rest will follow." The Kethrani launched their investigation. They interrogated prisoners randomly, looking for any sign of resistance. They offered rewards for information, extra food, better quarters, easier work assignments. They threatened terrible punishments for those who did not cooperate. The humans gave them nothing. Every prisoner told the same story. They knew nothing. They did nothing. They only wanted to survive and serve. Some prisoners were tortured for information, and they died without revealing anything. The Resistance had prepared for this. They had discussed what would happen if members were captured and interrogated. They had made peace with the possibility of death. Elena Vasquez was questioned 3 times. Each time, she wept and trembled and begged for mercy. She told the interrogators that she was just a teacher, that she did not understand violence, that she only wanted to see her family again. Her performance was flawless. The Kethrani dismissed her as too weak to be involved in anything threatening. They never suspected that she had planned their entire downfall while waiting for their questions. The footage showed one particularly significant moment. Doctor. At exactly 0300 station time, every light in the Harvest Moon mining complex went dark. The holographic display showed the event from multiple angles. Cameras that had been hidden throughout the facility, now recording the uprising for history. The delegates watched as the compound was plunged into complete blackness, a darkness so absolute that even the Kethrani's superior eyesight could not penetrate it. Commander Vorath was in his quarters when the lights died. The footage showed him reaching for his communication device, trying to contact his officers. But the device was silent. No signals, no voices, nothing but static. "Emergency power," he shouted, stumbling toward the door. "Activate the backup generators." But the backup generators had been sabotaged months ago. Dr. Webb had personally ensured that they would fail at the worst possible moment. Replacement parts had been quietly removed and hidden. Critical connections had been loosened just enough to fail under stress. The Kethrani's own equipment betrayed them. Throughout the complex, guards reached for weapons and tried to organize. But something was wrong with their movements. They were slow, their reactions delayed by fractions of a second that should not have mattered, but somehow did. Dr. Tanaka's neural compound had been doing its work for 6 months, building up in their systems, impairing their reflexes just enough to make a difference. The humans moved. The delegates watched in growing amazement as hundreds of prisoners transformed from cowering slaves into a coordinated military force. Teams that had never practiced together executed maneuvers with perfect timing. Fighters who had never held weapons before wielded tools converted into killing instruments with deadly efficiency. The Whisper Brigade led the way. Children as young as 8 crawled through ventilation shafts with practiced speed, guiding adult strike teams through paths the Kethrani had never mapped. Little Sophia moved at the front of one group, her small voice giving quiet directions in the darkness. She knew every turn, every junction, every hidden space in the entire complex. "Left at the next junction," she whispered. 3 guards ahead, confused, weapons not ready. 6 meters to contact. The adult fighters following her struck before the Kethrani even knew they were there. The footage showed multiple simultaneous operations happening across the facility. One team secured the armory, using knowledge gained from months of careful observation to bypass security systems that should have been unbreakable. Another team freed the Kethrani prisoners who had been held in secret for so long. Warriors who emerged from captivity, disoriented and confused, unable to help their fellow soldiers. "Why release them?" a Kovathi general asked. Surely they would have been easier to kill. The humans needed the Kethrani alive, Morith explained. You will understand why soon. Elena Vasquez led the main assault on the command center. She moved through the darkness with a certainty that came from 18 months of preparation. She knew exactly where every obstacle would be, exactly which corridors would offer cover, exactly how many steps separated her from Commander Vorath. Her team consisted of 20 volunteers, each carrying weapons improvised from stolen materials. They had trained in secret, practicing their movements in pitch darkness until they could fight without sight. The Kethrani, despite their superior physical abilities, had never trained for complete blackout conditions. Why would they? They had always controlled the lights. The footage showed the assault from Elena's perspective, captured by a tiny camera hidden in her clothing. The delegates saw guards looming out of the darkness, four-armed silhouettes with weapons raised. They saw Elena's team engage with ruthless precision, each fighter knowing exactly where to strike to disable a Kethrani warrior. The humans did not fight fair. They did not challenge their enemies to honorable combat. They struck from behind, from below, from angles the Kethrani did not expect. They used the environment as a weapon, collapsing tunnel sections, flooding corridors with steam from ruptured pipes, filling rooms with the chemical compounds Dr. Tanaka had prepared. "This is not warfare," a Kirix delegate observed, mandibles clicking with discomfort. "This is assassination. This is murder. This is survival," Morith replied quietly. The Kethrani had murdered humans for 18 months. They had worked them to death in mines. They had executed them for entertainment. The humans owed them no honor. Commander Vorith had barricaded himself in the command center with his elite guard. The footage showed him watching his compound fall on screens that flickered and died one by one. Each display that went dark represented another section of the facility lost to the uprising. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his officers. "They are farmers, teachers. They have no weapons, no training, no leaders." But Vorith was wrong on every count. They had weapons, improvised, hidden, constructed over 18 months from stolen materials. They had training, practiced in secret, perfected in darkness, tested in the desperate conditions of slavery. They had leaders. Elena Vasquez, a schoolteacher who had become a General Dr. Webb, who had turned his knowledge of their technology against them. Dr. Tanaka, whose chemistry had weakened their warriors. Sophia, a 12-year-old girl who had memorized their every vulnerability. The command center door held for 7 minutes. Then Dr. Webb remotely triggered an overload in the power junctions he had secretly accessed, and the reinforced locks failed. Elena entered first. The footage captured the moment in perfect detail. Commander Vorith, the decorated warrior who had conquered dozens of worlds, faced a small human woman whose clothes were little more than rags. She was thin from 18 months of poor food. She was scarred from injuries inflicted by his guards. Her face showed exhaustion that ran deeper than physical tiredness. But her eyes burned with something the Kethrani commander had never seen before. "You," Vorith said, recognition dawning. "The teacher. I questioned you 3 times. "Yes," Elena replied. "And each time, you dismissed me as too weak to be a threat." Vorith's forearms clenched into fists. Around him, his elite guard lay unconscious or restrained, taken down by Elena's team with practiced efficiency. He was alone, facing enemies who should have been helpless. "How?" The single word carried all his confusion, all his disbelief. Elena's response echoed through the council chamber 2 centuries later, and several delegates found themselves unable to breathe. "You saw what we were," she said. "You never imagined what we could become. You gave us nothing to lose and 18 months to think. You made us into this." Vorith tried to attack her then. Despite everything, he was still a Kethrani warrior, and his pride would not let him surrender to a human. He lunged forward with all the speed his forearms could provide. Elena sidestepped with a movement she had practiced 10,000 times in the darkness of her barracks. A tool converted into a blade found the gap in Voreth's armor that Dr. Webb had identified during maintenance inspections. The great commander fell, not dead, but disabled. "Kill me," Vorith demanded. "I will not be a prisoner of slaves." "You are not a prisoner," Elena said. "You are a witness. You will live to tell others what happened here. You will explain to the galaxy what humans are capable of when we are pushed too far." The uprising ended at 0343 station time. 43 minutes from start to finish. 300 Kethrani warriors neutralized by 8,000 farmers and teachers and children. Human casualties: 47 dead, 112 wounded. Kethrani casualties: 31 dead, the rest captured or incapacitated. The delegates absorbed these numbers in stunned silence. They had expected a massacre. They had expected to see humans crushed by superior forces. Instead, they had witnessed something unprecedented: a slave population rising against their masters and winning with almost surgical precision. They showed mercy, the Kravathi general said, his voice rough with an emotion he could not name. After everything the Kethrani did to them, they showed mercy. They could have killed them all. Yes, Morath agreed. They could have. But the humans had a different plan. The footage shifted to show the aftermath of the uprising. The humans had organized with remarkable speed. Medical teams treated wounded from both sides. Engineers worked to restore essential systems. Guards were placed over Kethrani prisoners, ensuring they were secure but not abused. Elena Vasquez addressed the liberated population from the command center, her voice carrying through speakers that Dr. Webb had reconnected. "We are free," she said, "but we are not safe. The Kethrani will send reinforcements when they realize what has happened here. We have perhaps 3 days to prepare. What can we do against warships?" Someone called out. "We have no military vessels, no orbital defenses." "We have something better," Elena replied. "We have the truth." The footage showed Dr. Webb working frantically at the communications array. For 11 months, he had studied Kethrani encryption without sending a single message. Now he put that knowledge to use. His fingers moved across controls that he understood better than their creators, preparing a broadcast that would reach every corner of the galaxy. The message was simple. It included the footage the delegates were now watching, a complete record of everything the Kethrani had done to Harvest Moon and everything the humans had done in response. It was edited and contextualized, with translations in every major galactic language. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council remained silent for a long time after Elder Morath finished speaking. The delegates who had laughed so freely just hours ago now sat with expressions that ranged from thoughtful to deeply unsettled. Ambassador Krethval of the Zerani hegemony was the first to break the silence. His voice had lost its earlier confidence. "Elder Morath," he said carefully, "surely you are not suggesting that humans pose a genuine threat to the galaxy. They have been peaceful for 2 centuries. They trade quietly with their neighbors. They have shown no signs of aggression." Morath's 3 eyes regarded the ambassador with something that might have been pity. "No signs of aggression," he repeated slowly. "Tell me, Ambassador, what do you know about the Kethrani?" We discussed this. They were a warrior species. They are now extinct. And why are they extinct? You said they destroyed themselves. Internal conflicts, failed wars, economic collapse. Morath nodded. All true. But you are missing something important. The Kethrani did not simply fail. They were pushed into failure. Their internal conflicts were encouraged by outside forces who saw their weakness. Their failed wars were against species who had studied the Harvest Moon footage and learned from it. Their economic collapse was accelerated by trading partners who decided that the Kethrani were no longer reliable. The elder rose from his chair, his ancient body moving with surprising grace. The humans did not destroy the Kethrani directly. They destroyed the Kethrani by example. They showed the galaxy that the mighty could fall. They demonstrated that patience and planning could defeat strength and numbers. And then they watched as the Kethrani's enemies used those lessons against them. A Volfrani delegate spoke up. "Are you saying the humans planned the extinction of an entire species?" "I am saying that the humans broadcast their victory to the entire galaxy, knowing exactly what effect it would have. They are not fools. They understood what they were doing." The chamber stirred with uncomfortable murmurs. The delegates had thought of humans as minor players in galactic affairs. The idea that humans might be strategically sophisticated enough to engineer the downfall of an empire was difficult to accept. "I would like to show you something else," Morath said. "Additional footage that few beings have ever seen." He made a gesture, and the holographic display activated once more. This time, the images showed not Harvest Moon, but various locations across human-controlled space. This footage was collected over the past 2 centuries by council observers, Morath explained. It documents what humans have been doing while we have ignored them. The first images showed human colonies. They were modest places, nothing like the grand cities of the Korvathi or the vast hive complexes of the Kiriks. Simple buildings, quiet streets, ordinary-looking humans going about their daily lives. But as the footage continued, patterns began to emerge. Every human colony maintains what they call a Harvest Moon Memorial, Morath narrated. It is a place where children learn about what happened there. The stories are taught in schools, retold in families, commemorated every year. The footage showed a classroom full of young humans. A teacher stood before them, explaining the events of the uprising. The children listened with intense focus. They do not forget, Morath said. They pass the memory from generation to generation. 200 years have passed, and every human child still knows the names of Elena Vasquez, Sophia of the Whisper Brigade, Dr. Webb, Dr. Tanaka. They know what happened when their ancestors were pushed too far. The footage shifted to show human military training. It was basic compared to the vast armies of the Korei or the warrior castes of the Kiriks, but there was something unsettling about it. Every human colony maintains a militia, Morath continued. They train regularly. They prepare for scenarios that seem unlikely. They practice fighting against superior numbers and technology. They teach their children survival skills from a young age. A Kirik's general clicked his mandibles skeptically. Militia forces are not a threat to real military power. A few farmers with weapons cannot challenge our legions. The Gethrani thought the same thing, Morath replied. Before Harvest Moon, they were certain that human resistance was impossible. They learned otherwise. The footage showed something else. Human diplomatic missions traveling to various species. Always small groups, always polite, always requesting nothing except trade relationships and cultural exchange. They are charming, Morath observed. They make friends easily. They learn languages quickly, adapt to other cultures, find ways to be useful. Over 2 centuries, they have built trading relationships with over 40 species. They have cultural exchange programs with a dozen more. They are popular. Being popular is not a crime, Krethful pointed out. No, but consider what it means. If the humans were ever attacked again, who would respond? How many species now have connections to human worlds? How many governments have citizens who do business with humans, who have visited human colonies, who consider humans friends? The delegates began to shift uncomfortably. They had not considered this angle. The Kethrani attacked humans when humans were alone, Morath said. When they had no allies, no connections, no one who would care if they were destroyed. That situation no longer exists. An attack on human space today would have consequences. Species who trade with humans would face economic disruption. Species who have cultural ties to humans would face public pressure to respond. The humans have quietly built a web of relationships that would make attacking them far more complicated than it was 2 centuries ago. The footage showed a final sequence. A conversation between human diplomats and representatives of a species called the Dreth. The Dreth had recently been in conflict with the Korvathi, a dispute over territorial boundaries that threatened to escalate into open warfare. The human diplomats listened to the Dreth complaints with apparent sympathy. They offered no weapons, no military support, nothing that would violate the restrictions on human participation in galactic conflicts. But they offered something else, advice. The Korvathi are proud, one human diplomat said. They respond poorly to direct challenges, but they care deeply about their reputation. If their actions were exposed to public scrutiny, if other species began to question their honor, they might be more willing to negotiate. The footage showed the aftermath of this conversation. The Dreth launched a campaign not of warfare, but of information. They documented Kavathi activities in the disputed territory and broadcast them widely. They made their case to other species, seeking not military allies, but moral support. They used the power of example. The conflict ended peacefully, with the Kavathi making significant concessions to avoid further damage to their reputation. The humans shared their methods, Morath said. They taught the Dreth what they had learned at Harvest Moon, that reputation is power, that patience is a weapon, that sometimes you can defeat an enemy without fighting them directly. A Kavathi delegate rose angrily. Are you accusing the humans of conspiring against us? I am pointing out that humans have quietly spread their philosophy throughout the galaxy for 200 years. They do not have warships. They do not have vast armies. But they have something that may be more dangerous in the long term. They have ideas. And those ideas spread. The chamber fell silent again. Let me tell you about the current state of human society, Morath continued. They have 43 colonies now. Their population has grown to approximately 2 billion. They have developed modest but reliable technology. They maintain active research programs in fields ranging from agriculture to medicine to other areas. Other areas? Morath hesitated. Council observers have noted significant human investment in what they call long-term strategic planning. They maintain organizations dedicated to thinking about the future. Not just years ahead, but generations, centuries. They plan for scenarios that may never occur. They prepare for eventualities that seem impossible. He looked around the chamber. One of these planning organizations is called the Harvest Moon Institute. Its purpose is to ensure that humans are never caught unprepared again. It studies potential threats to human civilization. It develops response strategies. It maintains detailed files on every species in the known galaxy, including our strengths, weaknesses, and vulnerabilities. The delegates stirred uneasily. We estimate that the Harvest Moon Institute has accumulated more information about the Galactic Council and its member species than the Council has about itself. They have been watching us, learning about us, planning for us for 200 years. And they have done this so quietly that most beings have never heard of them. Ambassador Krethvol's voice was barely above a whisper. What are they planning? Honestly, nothing aggressive, as far as we can tell. The humans seem genuinely peaceful. They have no desire to conquer or dominate. But they also have no intention of ever being victims again. They are prepared for every scenario they can imagine. And they imagine many scenarios that would never occur to other species. Morath returned to his seat, his ancient body settling into the chair with visible weariness.